People from Black, Asian, and racially minoritized backgrounds are underrepresented in the cultural industries. The Centre on the Dynamics of Ethnicity wanted to know what it was like working in the cultural and creative sector during a global pandemic which hit many culture industries hard, and during a time of increased attention to ethnic inequalities due to the murder of George Floyd and the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement.
I definitely think Black Lives Matter was just like a double whammy on top of an already scary time. To be honest, at that point, I was like already exhausted and kind of just thought this is something that we already know, like especially in the Black community, I already like know is happening, and I actually felt like it was more of a thing for my white colleagues to solve and figure out, which, you know, but I still felt like I had a responsibility to do something like you, so I kind of did get involved and I did kind of like speak up about certain things, but ultimately it kind of felt like this is something that I've been trying to work on for a long time, and now all of a sudden my white colleagues are like, oh, like we feel really uncomfortable, like what do we do about this? They're like turning to you, and it's like, we didn't cause the problem. Like so we can't solve the problem. It has to be something that everyone's in together. And I think a lot of organizations set up like task force or diversity like working groups and things like that as a result of Black Lives Matter. But I think my opinion, like after, I know I was involved in one where I was working, but I think it just felt like when you rely on a task force, again, it's like sidelining the issue, and unless everyone is involved and committed and held to account, nothing's going to change. And again, it's like a gesture, but it isn't going to create long-term change.
Some people who had no knowledge of like anything to do with like being anti-racist would be on their Instagram story saying, you know, Black Lives Matter, I really support them, including companies as well. Like I went to Oxford and they are really like, yeah, we are pro like representation, pro diversity, blah blah blah, but the institution is just built on racism. And so even if you care about representation in terms of having BAME students there, why are their experiences there so bad in comparison to their white middle class counterparts, and why are we doing nothing about that? And so it was stuff like that where it was kind of like empty promises or like empty statements of like, yes, we stand with the Black people, but what are you actually doing to stand with the Black people? So for me, that was kind of the frustration that I felt during that time. But I think there was also positive change, and I think it gave a lot of people confidence, a lot of people from ethnic minorities confidence to come forward, and if something happens in their work that's racist or like a microaggression which might not be out and out racist, I think at least for me it gave me the confidence to be able to come forward and say, this has happened, you said you support Black Lives Matter, so why are you letting this happen? And so I think in those terms it's good for accountability.
The BLM stuff started and it kind of felt weird to be in a meeting talking about like, do you think that this character would be a doctor or a nurse, when it's like, people are dying, why are we talking about this? And then I was like, so I was kind of frustrated that we were not addressing it, but then I was also worried about when it came time to address it, because I felt like everyone would just turn to me and be like, so what are we going to do? I was like, I don't know if I have the answers to this, especially given the nature of this industry where it feels like things are commissioned in a sense, like rather than other shows that like, this is a show about a crime, this is a show about family, it's like, this is a Black show and we have our little spate of Black shows and that's it. And it felt like all the, like especially like the messaging from the BBC, we're going to spend more money on Black shows. It's like, well, stop pigeonholing creators into this, like, you're Black, so you make Black shows, and there's only like 5 Black shows a year, so if you don't get that slot, that's it for you. Make it feel more like, oh, we're just going to make this more of a thing, so that everyone feels like they can make whatever they want to make, because not everybody wants to do a life crime story. So why are you only commissioning life crime stories? That's why people are not excited about working in this industry. And so that's kind of where our conversations were, and it kind of felt like, for me, I think it's important for us, it felt important for us as a company to make Black shows that weren't negative, black shows, but then also to like make sure the team behind it was also representative. Like, you know, I as a development person, being black, working with a writer who's black or any other ethnic minority, it really, I think, creates a safe space for that person to tell the story that they want to tell, as opposed to like, what's the version that like this white producer wants. And so that's something that I've realised is important to me. And then, you know, in EastEnders they painted a mural, so that really solved everything, and that was like, we don't need to talk about this anymore, it's sorted. So it's like balancing what are real changes that we can make in our industries, and like what is just like, oh hi, we're doing this, so stop talking about it.
But I do think maybe one kind of good thing that came from BLM is that I found, when talking to those kind of people that I would have spoken to in the past, they're far more interested in me and like the difference in our cultures, but like not in a weird like fetishy way, but more in like I never even thought about how different your life might be to mine, or like the experiences that you might have that I wouldn't have experienced, like tell me more about that. So it that was nice for me, because it wasn't so much like I was just trying to understand their world, which I think was very closely linked to BLM.
Have you felt any impact of those statements? Do you feel optimistic for the future, especially for racialized people, like following the protests and these statements that were released?
I do have a sense of optimism, but I think we still have a long way to go, and I think it's going to take more than black squares, and I think it's going to take more than task forces. I think, yeah, it's going to take a while, and I think if anything that this has highlighted that we've still got a long way to go.
Yeah, I think I'm probably more cynical, just because I think, like you said, there's so much work to do, and like, okay, so you might tick the box of going out to more black and ethnic people, but are you creating environments where those people want to stay? Are you creating environments where they feel like they can go to their counterparts and be like, I don't know, I'm struggling, like, is there a support network there? Because if there isn't, it's kind of like, okay, I'm in the door, but I hate being here. And if you don't feel comfortable somewhere, it's so hard to do a job. Like, when I first started at my job, it was me and everybody else like knew each other and had all worked at the BBC, and they were much older than me, and I felt very isolated, and that made me feel like, oh, I don't know if this is the industry for me, if this is what it's going to be like. It's just sort of going to be me and then everyone else. And slowly it's changed, but it is still like, it's me, and then it's all of my like counterparts, and there is no like, it doesn't feel like, oh, we're trying to connect you with other people. It feels like you've got to go out and do all of that yourself. You need to create an environment that feels safe for you yourself, when actually they could be doing a lot more.
You know, I agree with what everyone else has said so far. I think like I have a sense of optimism, but I also agree with what you said in that, like, yeah, recruitment might be better, and there might be more organisations are now saying, okay, we've got this scheme, you know, for more people who aren't white. But I think actually the issue, so much of it is like staff retention, and I think it's like creating an environment where people feel comfortable to be themselves and they don't feel alienated, or like they're the one that people go to whenever there's any like non-white issue. But I think I would agree with what you said before as well. I think a positive impact of the protests so that people are more open to having conversations and people are more curious about experiences. But I still think there's such a long way to go, especially in terms of like the nuances of experience, and like one person shouldn't represent a whole community, and we would never expect that of like a white person to speak for the whole of their community. So why do we do it? And I think, you know, for me, like I'm half Egyptian, and I think so often people would just like put me in a box of like Arab or Middle Eastern, or if there's like a story, you know, for example, if there's a story about like the Turkish community, I've had people come to me and be like, what do you think about that? And I'm like, well, I'm not Turkish, so I definitely can't comment on that. And so I think there's a lot of work to be done of understanding like the specifics of different cultures, and like the fact that it's much more nuanced than just, oh, you look like that, so therefore you can just speak for this whole community.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with most of what everyone said. I kind of like can see the changes happening, but there's a long way to go. I think specifically because we work with a lot of actors, I think I can see change happening in that sector. Like for example, with what we're talking about with making people feel comfortable in environments, hair and makeup for black actors was so poor. Like a black actor would go to a job thinking, well, yeah, I'm gonna have to do my own hair, I'm probably gonna have to do my makeup, even though there's an MUA and a hairstylist, but they're not gonna know how to deal with my hair, or oh, my hair is a problem, so tell me how you want my hair and I'll go to my barber's and I'll get it done, and then I'll come on set and have it ready for you. And so I think that was just a norm. Like it was just oh yeah, it's just a fact, they're not gonna know how to do my hair, they're not gonna know how to do my makeup, and that's fine. And I think that that's something that is becoming way more spoken about, and it's kind of like in contracts now. You're seeing the production will have hair and makeup stylists who can do Afro hair or who can do Caribbean hair or whatever. And so I think there's kind of the issues that are there are being highlighted, and I think the changes are just coming, but it's slow and it will take a while. But I'm just hoping and praying that they lead to positive results and positive change.
That sounds like guarded optimism, which I think is I can live with that for now.